In this video, I'm going to show how to add beads to a knitted fabric. And what we're going to use are size 6-0 Toho seed beads. And what I like to do is, instead of pouring all the beads out into a container, I just put a few out at a time. That way, if something happens and the dish falls, I don't have to pick up 7 million beads, I only have to pick up the few that are in a container. You'll also need a crochet hook that is a smaller size. This is a 1.25 millimeter olive wood crochet hook from Skacel by Addie. And if you're not quite sure about whether or not the hook will fit the bead as you're shopping, you can take your crochet hook with you when you're shopping and just make sure that the bead will fit easily onto the neck of the hook, and also bring just a bit of the yarn. It doesn't even have to be a project, to make sure that the hook will hold on to the yarn and that you're able to sneak the bead over the head of the hook and onto the stitch. So when we are knitting with these beads, they're going to go around the stitch like this. So here is how the process works. It's pretty simple. All the beads in this particular project that we are working with, the Encased in Amber shawl, are added on the front or on the knit side of the fabric. But the process would be the same if you were adding the stitch, adding a bead to a purl stitch as well. So I am just going to knit a few stitches away from the edge. And when we're reading the chart, we'll just pretend that this next stitch is the one where I'm supposed to place the bead. So in order for the bead to be on the row of knitting that I'm working on right now, you can see that the row that I'm knitting is above this stitch right here. I need to first work this stitch. So I'm going to knit this stitch and then add the bead, right? So here I am knitting a stitch, very exciting. And then I will take my little crochet hook and find a bead. Come here, one of you. This one will work. And get it onto the hook. It's a lot easier to do, not trying to do it while you're filming, right? But this is the stitch that I wanted to add that the bead to. So I'm just turning my work around because I'm right-handed, and I'm engaging that little hook, taking the bead and sliding it over the stitch and putting that loop back on that right hand needle. When I turn it back to the right side, you can see that I knitted a stitch, added a bead, and it's all done, right? Let's do, we'll knit a couple stitches here, and let's pretend that this is the stitch that I need to add a bead to. So first, for this project, I'm going to knit the stitch and pick up a bead. Come here, any of you. There we go. So there's my bead. I have it on my hook. I'm turning it around, again, just because I'm right-handed, I'm holding my hook in my right hand, and I will get that hook, put that loop onto the hook, and slide that bead onto the stitch, and then transfer the stitch back to that same needle. When I turn it back around, that stitch is complete. And you see that I'm just giving it a little tiny tug there to sort of even up that stitch. Shall we do it one more time? Okay, so we're knitting and knitting. And of course you'd be following the pattern, however many stitches it says between each of the times to add a bead. So let's pretend that this is the place where I'm going to add the bead. Ready? So first, knit the stitch in this case. I'm going to turn my work around just so that it's facing the way I want. Get a bead onto my hook. Now, if for some reason, let's just pretend, well, we don't even have to pretend. If for some reason this happens where the hook doesn't really want to fit through, if you just turn the hook a little bit, it will generally go onto the neck of the hook. The bead will. If the bead doesn't want to go onto the hook, it's too small, or there's a burr or something, you can discard that bead or set it aside, maybe put it in a little tiny bag or something. That way you don't have to worry about it not working for the project. So you saw I just took the loop of yarn off of the needle, and I am going to work that bead over the hook. Get that loop back on to my my knitting needle. There we go. And we're going. So you see how these are all on the ones I'm completing, and I've been knitting a stitch and then add in the bead. So here is, I'll just add a stitch to this, add a bead to this stitch here. Let me grab a bead. Come here, little bead. See, this one doesn't want to go on the hook, onto the hook, so I'll try a different one. Let's try this guy. There we go. So this stitch I have not worked yet. This is before knitting. So if we do it this way, and I add the bead to this loop, this bead also is being a fussy one. There it goes. I would transfer it back to the left hand needle, and then I would work the stitch. And when I do that, you see how it puts that bead one stitch lower? Let me just get to the end of this. So we have a flat piece of fabric to show you. There, yeah, okay. So you see how those two beads are in two different places? We want our beads to be on the stitch that we have worked. So to do this project, you want to first knit the stitch and then pick up the bead and turn the work around and place the bead onto the stitch you just worked. Slip that loop of yarn back on the needle and then continue on with your work. So hopefully that helps answer any questions you have about adding beads to your knitting while working the encased in amber shawl. If you have other questions, you can always reach out to us, hello@makersmercantile.com, or give us a call. Thanks for watching.